Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer. This video is all about June in review. How many books did I read? What genres were they? My top 5 books. And I usually give 2 books that didn't make the top 5, but in this video I'm going to mention 4 books. So in total, 9 books in detail for this video. But first, how many books did I read in June and what were the genres? In June, I read 23 books and 3 novellas. Let's go down to genre. Thrillers, 11 books. Fantasy, 3 books. Sci-fi, 1 book. Horror, 3 books. Cozy mysteries, 8 books. So again, a bit of a range in genre, but the top genres for June were thrillers and cozy mysteries. Let's go to my top 5 books for the month. The first is Little Eve by Catriona Ward. I enjoyed this book very much. Catriona Ward writes amazing horrors and is one of my favourite horror authors of modern times. This book is very gothic in nature. It centres around a group of people living on a small island. It's not far from the mainland. I mean, you just have to go through this heavy iron gate and walk across a small bridge to get there. But most of the time, the tide cuts that island off from the mainland. Also, this group of people are mainly children, some young adults, and a guy who looks after them, he says, but he feels more like a cult leader than a father. And he's adopting children from all different areas of the country, and they're children that tend to have no connections elsewhere. Now, in this book we learn certain things about this guy that are very dark and very dangerous. We also learn many things about the children, and most things we learn about the children are they're being mistreated, and they believe what the guy is saying because from a very young age they've been drilled into this strange mythology that he gives them. He tells them they're the chosen ones, that everybody else in the world's evil, and then at a certain time there's going to be a cleansing of the world basically, and they're going to survive. So that's what they live by on this island. They're half-starved, they're punished in awful ways for doing things that he thinks are wrong. So many things in this book are so dark, and when you read this, it is a challenge sometimes to read it. But behind all this, we have a mystery. And this mystery is so well done and so well written. It's got great twists and turns through this book. They're surprising. And when you get to those moments where those twists and turns happen, everything kind of shifts and makes sense in the story as well. But they're so surprising, the twists. They're so well written. Catriona Ward just writes amazing books in my view. The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I'm reading a few of his books this month. I think he's a good author, writes some good thrillers. This is my favourite that I've read of his so far. I enjoy this a lot. It's mainly around this woman who's living alone at a house at a lake. And she's been watching neighbours across the lake with binoculars. Then she sees something that she thinks that one of them has killed the other, and she starts to try to investigate that. But she's unreliable as a character as well. She drinks a lot all through the day. So can we trust what she sees? So there are a few tropes in this book as well, but the book itself is written so well. The tension in this book, you can almost touch it. The characters are written so well in this story. They all feel real, and they just suck you in so much into this book. I won't tell you too much about the plot, so I don't want to give anything away in this story accidentally, but I enjoyed this a lot. If you've not read this author before, I suggest start with this one. Read this one first, because for me it's the strongest I've read so far. The Lie Maker by Linwood Barclay. I enjoyed this a lot, and it renews my faith in this author. Everything about this book is constructed very well. It's got great slow burn elements in the story. It has sprinkles of high tension moments, but that slow burn element is what really gives this book its strength. Also, the characters. Most of the characters are almost perfect. The main character, I think, suits this book so well. He feels so ordinary. He feels like a normal person. That's his strength and also his weakness, because he's not going to be a character that you'll talk about for years to come. But he's a character that stands out so much in this story. The whole plot is structured very well. There are good twists and turns in this story that will surprise you. The only thing I think that weakens this book a little bit is the conclusion. The conclusion just feels a bit too happy and out of place with the rest of the story. It ties things up neatly, but it's not the best conclusion that the book could have had in my view. But overall, a well-written thriller, a great mystery playing throughout the book as well, great slow burn elements that build up to small, high-octane moments in the story, but so well done. Classified as murder by Miranda James, this is part of the Cat in the Stacks Cozy Mystery series. I enjoyed this because of the way the mystery is constructed. It feels like Agatha Christie mystery. So we have a murder that happens in a huge house with a lot of people in the house at a time. So any of these people could have been the murderer, and our main character has to work out who that is. So I like that type of mystery. I like that mystery where there's a murder in a house and we have many suspects who live there because they're all likely suspects. And I like watching the main character try to wrangle out of them information to find out who the culprit is. That whole setup really made this book what it is for me. Also, it's book 2 in this series, and the main protagonist still feels okay in this series by book 2. There are other books in this series that I also read during the month, and I had different views on that main protagonist in those books. So this series can be a bit hit and miss in how you feel about certain characters, but overall this book is very strong. I enjoyed it very much, and I think this series is quite a strong series overall despite my misgivings about certain characters in certain books. So if you like cozy mysteries, give this series a go. I think there's about 14 or 15 books in this series overall. I'm going to read them all, and this month I think I read 6 of the books. The last book I'll mention in my top 5 is Victory of Eagles by Naomi Novik. It's a fantasy. It's in the Temeraire series. Now this series is set in historical times in our real world, so it's set at a time where France and England are at war. But history with dragons, and it all feels real. So that's one of the strengths about this series, is the author makes you think that history did have dragons. The other really good thing about this book is it tidies up some of the themes and storylines going on in the other books in this series. And it brings to some sort of conclusion the battle between France and England. Those battle scenes don't feel boring. They don't feel boring because of the dragons, that's in my view anyway. This book also has growth for the dragons and also the humans in England. So most of the action takes place in England in this book. I like that growth in the storyline for all the characters. I like the fact that we get to meet new dragons in this book as well. And Naomi Novik gives great personalities to all these dragons. They all feel different. They all have their own different strengths and weaknesses. In this book, those strengths come to the forefront so much because the dragons are integral to the war effort and they form their own units in the army as well. So I enjoyed that part of it as well. This book for me is one of the best books in this series. Not the best. The best book was the first book in the series in my view. But this book is very strong and I can't wait to read the rest in this series. Now for 4 books that didn't make the top 5 but are worthy of a mention because they almost made the top 5 list. The first is In the Heart of the Fire by Dean Koontz. This is a novella, not a full-length book. It's the first novella in the Nameless series, so Dean Koontz has structured this series to have Season 1 and Season 2, and I think in Season 1 there's 6 novellas, and I read 3 in June. I enjoyed this very much, and I've enjoyed the other 2 I've read as well, but this one especially, because we're introduced to this character Nameless in this first one, and the way he's introduced is very intriguing. He doesn't know his name, he doesn't even know his history. All he knows is 2 years of time when he started working for some secret organisation that sends him around the country to help people. That's all he knows. And he's given orders by this mysterious character called Ace of Diamonds. We don't know if Ace of Diamonds is a woman or a man. We don't even know who Ace of Diamonds is. Know nothing about Ace of Diamonds other than Nameless receives text messages from this person. So it's interesting that we have Nameless, who we see in the story. We don't know his name. But then we have this Ace of Diamonds who has a name or a code name, but we don't know what this Ace of Diamonds looks like. So it feels like a bit of a mix-up there going on between those two characters, but they're very engaging, both of them actually, even though Ace of Diamonds is only known through text messages and maybe emails. He's very engaging and intriguing as a character in this whole series so far. That's what the whole series seems to be about so far. Nameless arrives at a town and he helps someone out, usually helps someone out by killing somebody, and then he goes on to his next mission. But it's all about how he tracks those people down and what he does, and who those people are, and will those people get away or not. That's the whole concept of these novellas, and that's where all suspense and tension comes from. So I'm enjoying them very much. Traced by Catherine Jinks. Now I enjoyed this a lot. It's the first book by Catherine Jinks that I've read. I do plan to read more that she's written. This is interesting. So it's set in the onset of COVID, and it centers around this person who's a COVID tracer. And through an activity she does of helping somebody out who may have COVID, she comes across somebody from her past, somebody dangerous from her past. That sends her into a bit of a spiral, because we learn that this woman and her daughter both changed their identities to get away from this person. And this person was engaged to her daughter, and this person they're scared of is quite dangerous. So he learns now where this person is and what her name is. And so this starts a bit of a cat and mouse thing going on between these characters. They're afraid for their lives, and they're going into hiding even more to try to get away from this person who's quite dangerous. Now, it's a very slow burn book, I think. More psychological in nature than physical tension, physical threats. That's my view anyway. Because most of the action that goes on is from a distance. Most of that tension is built up from a distance, because we don't get any moments really until towards the end where the villain actually comes into the same scenes physically as this main character. So in my view, I would have preferred to have more cat and mouse style scenes where they're in the same scene together early on in the story, and we have maybe some narrow escapes and people running from this person, things like that. But I still enjoyed the way it was written, the way it was constructed, and much of that is to do with the main character. I enjoyed the main character's mind in the story and her point of view. I also enjoyed a side character who just felt very Australian. So this book is set in Australia by an Australian author, and there's a side character, a support character, who just feels so uniquely Australian that that character would not fit into a book that was set in some other country like the US or the UK. That's a strength in this book as well, because it gives this whole book a really true feeling. So in my view, this book is worth reading. If you like more physical threats in your thrillers, this book may not be for you. But if you like threats that come about in different ways that are more in the mind, then I think give this a go. The next is When They Came by Cody Boy. I enjoyed this very much. It's dystopian sci-fi set 6 years after aliens invade Earth. This book is very well done in the tension and build-up towards when big things happen in the story. And when those big things happen, it shifts the book into kind of a higher action storyline. So we have a bit of a build-up to get to know certain characters in the story, and then a big moment that gives us great contrast in the book. And I thought that contrast was very well done. I thought those action scenes and the way they shift the narrative was very well done, and the way they shift the characters into a whole different point of view was well done as well. The sci-fi elements in this story are quite strong. They're not super detailed, but they're still quite strong, and they open up a lot of questions. They open up questions in my mind about these aliens. I want to learn more about them, and that's one of the strengths in this story as well, and makes you want to read more in the series because of those questions. Also the cliffhanger in this book. The cliffhanger is so well done, very strong, and it feels like it's going to shift the whole focus of the story almost 180 in the second book in this series, and I can't wait to read more in this series. The last is Emperor of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. This is the last book in the Broken Empire series. I enjoyed this one because it shifts a lot of the characters, it develops them more, especially the main character. The main character in this series called George, he's one of the most unique main characters I've read in fiction. He's an anti-hero. He's the most antiest anti-hero I've ever read. And he just feels very strong in construction. He does feel consistent. It To be honest, he's a complete sociopath in these books, but despite the fact that he's vile in so many ways, he's such an engaging character because of the way he's written. And we get so much of his mind in these stories as well, from his point of view. This book is very strong because he grows as a character. Also, the villain in this book is quite strong. One of the villains anyway is quite strong, but I wish the villain was used more. So there's so many good things to like about this series overall, and this book especially. The first book in this series for me is the strongest overall, but this one was strong because of that growth in the character. And it does tidy up things in the narrative quite well. I didn't like the ending of this book at all. I thought it could have ended differently. I thought it was just a really bizarre way to end the whole series overall, and quite a bit of a challenge to accept that after reading so much of this series, and they are quite lengthy books, especially books 2 and 3, to get to that conclusion and have that, it's very hard to accept. But despite that conclusion, I did enjoy this book very much. There you have my month in review for June. What genres I read, my top 5 books, and 4 books that almost made the top 5. I can't tell you what I'm going to read in July, because I don't know. I don't plan that far in advance. The only thing I can say is I will read the Nameless novellas by Dean Koontz, and I'll probably read the rest of Riley Sager's books if I can get my hands on them. On my channel, I review books of all different genres. Check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to a video for another book I'm sure you'll enjoy.